Representative Lissegard, House File 3992, and the chair will move that House File 3992 be re-referred to the Committee on Taxes. And there is a DE amendment. And and I will move the DE1 amendment to put the bill in the form in which the author would like to discuss it. So let's adopt that amendment, and then the author can discuss it. So all in favor of adoption of the DE1 amendment, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. The DE1 is amended. So welcome, Representative Lissegard, to your bill as amended.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. This bill, very simply, is to get money out to ambulance services across the state of Minnesota that are struggling. And before I get into it, I just want to acknowledge you and Representative Backer and Representative Hewitt and Senator Seeberger and Senator Hochschild, others. Had a wonderful opportunity, and I say wonderful, it's a very sad state of affairs that we're in, but it really opened my eyes. It educated me to know that I didn't know very much about the struggles that ambulance services and providers are having across the state of Minnesota. We are at a very, very critical point where services are about to collapse. And that's what this money will do as amended. It'll get money out the door while we work for long-term solutions. And those solutions will take many different shapes and will go through a process of its own. But our job is to, when they came to us, our job is to be able to help them provide a service to the people across the state of Minnesota. And this is not about Democrat or Republican. This is about meeting the needs of people. And so I'm proud. I have people that are going to testify. There is accountability in this bill for them. It's just not a free handout. They have to go through a process. They have to apply. There's checks and balances. They have to prove that the need is there and is warranted before they can receive anything. So with that, I'll just answer any questions and let the testifiers go forward.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Representative Lissegard, and thanks for being such a great advocate on this issue for your community. Clearly, everyone in the state of Minnesota who needs an ambulance should get one within a reasonable time, and the services should be effective and help them out. So thank you for championing this. So we have a number of people on the list. So Paul Peltier, and we'll have to ask everyone to be brief, but we do want to hear from you. So welcome to the committee. Please state your name and go ahead. 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair Liebling, members of the committee. My name is Paul Peltier, and I'm the Executive Director of RAMS, the Range Association of Municipalities and Schools. We serve a 7-county region in northeastern Minnesota focused on the Iron Range and the Northland. And we have 155,000 people that we serve and 15 school districts, 27 cities, and 27 townships that are our members. So we are very honored to be able to have hosted the task force and their work this year as they were doing their listening sessions. Thank you to Rep. Backer, Senator Seeberger, Rep. Hewitt, Senator Hochschild, and Rep. Lissegard, all members of that committee and a part of the listening ear to kind of put a fine point on illuminating this problem for our communities. We know that this issue is important to everyone across the state of Minnesota, and we are very grateful that everyone is bringing their best intentions and their best will towards this issue right now. As Rep. Lissegard said, this is not a Democratic or a Republican issue. This is an everybody human issue, and that when someone picks up the phone and hopes EMS comes to their aid, no matter their zip code, they deserve to have that care that they deserve. So thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony. Jason Sinning and then Patrick Waletsko. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Jason Sitting. I currently serve as a paramedic and ambulance operations coordinator for Stevens County EMS in Morris. I've worked in EMS, fire, and healthcare field for 17 years in a variety of roles, including ground ambulance, flight, home care, and administrative roles. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes to speak in support of this important legislation. As you're aware, this bill proposes $120 million in emergency aid to provide for immediate short-term ambulance service sustainability. The funding is desperately needed by rural ambulance services, especially those with run volumes under 2,000 calls per year. If this funding is not allocated, we have to recognize the very real possibility that ambulance services will be forced to continue to reduce services, response capabilities, and in some cases, cease operations. All Minnesotans expect, rely on, and benefit from the fact that all across the state, ambulance services and highly trained clinicians are ready to respond. As a state, we have to ensure that expectation matches with reality. Reimbursement rates through Medicare and medical assistance are inadequate and have been for many years. What this funding would do is stop the bleed. It doesn't address the underlying ongoing issue, but it would provide immediate relief and allow us to continue serving our communities. We are all well aware that insurance premiums and deductibles are increasing. Increased deductibles mean an increased financial burden on the patients, while insurance companies continue to see profits soar and the amount paid to the ambulance service on behalf of the patient decreases. The amount of uncompensated calls our ambulance service responds to has increased by 300% over the last 4 years. Ambulance services are no longer able to sustain solely on the revenues generated from those that happen to use the service, nor should we expect only a handful of people to fund the readiness that an ambulance service provides to all who live, work, play, and visit our service areas across Minnesota. Continuing to rely on volunteers to subsidize the EMS system is unreasonable. Our responsibility and expectation is important as responding and provide life-saving emergency medical care deserves EMTs and paramedics that are compensated appropriately with respect to the financial aspect, but also when considering the time commitment, risk, and emotional toll that our jobs can have. I care deeply and am very proud of the EMS system in Minnesota, particularly where we operate in West Central Minnesota. We have excellent clinicians. The primary service area model ensures equitability, availability of service to all Minnesotans, and our innovation and clinical outcomes. As a state, we have always been at the forefront of the industry nationwide.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. Patrick Waletzko, and then Eric Simonson, and then Cap O'Rourke. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. My name is Patrick Waletzko, and I serve as the Emergency Management Director for Otter Tail County. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you this morning to give testimony with regards to Senate File 3992. On behalf of the residents and visitors of Otter Tail County, we urge this committee to take action necessary to protect emergency medical services throughout the state. Statewide emergency medical services have markedly weakened over the past several years. This weakness relates directly to lack of adequate funding to cover increasing costs, readiness, staffing, and reimbursement for services, while simultaneously addressing the rising ambulance calls. Many emergency medical services, regardless of their business model, currently face the financial hardship across the state. In Otter Tail County alone, our 7 EMS providers have experienced an estimated single-year loss of $1.5 million due to uncompensated care to the services they provide our communities. Gaps in state and federal reimbursement of EMS services are straining local and county governments to respond. This is neither sustainable, nor does it address the root cause of under-reimbursement of emergency medical services. Otter Tail County strongly urges you to consider funding emergency medical services at $120 million. But we also recognize this is one piece of an overall puzzle, and further ask this committee and the entire legislature to address additional areas of immediate concerns, including funding of EMS service innovation, looking at designation of emergency medical services as an essential service, disconnecting emergency medical service reimbursement from patient transportation, looking at support for community paramedic programs, broadly funding emergency medical services education, and recognition of the exceptional challenges to rural services. I thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Eric Simonson, then Cap O'Rourke. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairs. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Eric Simonson. I am a lobbyist with Flaherty and Hood, representing the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. We are here today in full support of House File 3992. And the reason why that we care is that if you look at the ambulance service licenses across the state of Minnesota, more than 50% of them are held by some local unit of government. We're very grateful to Representative Liz Lagarde for chief authoring this bill, and we're also grateful to the 24 co-authors that have signed on in support of this bill, recognizing what really is the gravity of the situation, especially in Greater Minnesota. Also grateful to the 41 organizations that have signed on this handout, which should be in your packet. It represents a wide variety of interests across the state of Minnesota that are in support of this bill, and it's definitely worth taking a look at. Over the interim, the summer, the fall, early winter, we spent a lot of time going across the state, visiting with our members, trying to really understand what the underlying cause of the problem is around EMS. And we heard the same thing consistently. It's lack of funding and it's workforce challenges. We also followed the legislative task force and their work across the state. What did they hear? Funding and workforce challenges. This bill is meant to address just that in a one-time fashion that buys us a bridge to get into 2025. There's 2 points that I want to make with the bill real quick. One is that the fact is it's a literal Band-Aid. It's simply meant to get us into 2025 when we can have a longer conversation about a long-term fix. Secondly, the $120+ million that's appropriated in the bill is not a random number. It actually represents the amount of loss that's experienced across the state of Minnesota. It's real, it's tangible, and it's here. I would say thank you, Madam Chair, and I stand available for comment or questions. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you for your testimony. Cap O'Rourke. Welcome to the committee.
Madam Chair, members, my name is Cap O'Rourke. I'm here on behalf of Minnesota Association of Small Cities. We advocate on the over 700 cities with populations under 5,000. 90 of those cities currently operate PSAs across the state of Minnesota. These are some of our smallest communities that are operating an EMS service. And the reality is, as has been mentioned, that they are struggling. They have been struggling before this with reimbursements rates not keeping up with the services they provide, but with the workforce, critical workforce challenges that they are seeing now, it is becoming more and more a struggle. As Mr. Simonson said, this is a critical issue, and we acknowledge that this is simply a short-term Band-Aid, that there are bigger issues for us to look at across the state. But the situation is serious and is real for our smallest communities that are trying to provide EMS services to their constituents. We have communities we have ambulance services that have struggled either through reimbursement rates or ones that have had to merge with others because of the lack of workforce. It is a serious issue, and it is an operation that you cannot simply merge with other and trying to coalesce with administrative costs, because the reality is you still need to get a vehicle with trained and professional personnel out to people in a short and quick manner. So we strongly support this bill, and we urge your committee to do the same. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else who wants to testify on this bill? Okay. We'll go to member discussion. Representative Backer.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and members. And thank you for Representative Lisgard. I know we traveled the state, got up to the Great Mountain Iron area, which was a 7-hour trip one way from the hump bump tip elbow nose of Minnesota. But one of the things that I want to share with a lot of folks is Greater Minnesota. I'm one of those individuals that would provide volunteer service for runs under 200 runs a year. And unfortunately, as I've shared before, us volunteers are subsidizing these runs, and we're happy to do that. Unfortunately, last week, I'll use our service as an example. I'm down in St. Paul. My twin brother, who takes as much call time as I do, was gone. We had 4 runs last week, actually 2 on Thursday. And of the 4, we had to have two of those runs came from an ambulance service 25 miles away. One of those runs, unfortunately, was an extremely good friend of mine, and I wasn't there for her. I was in St. Paul. Last night, the pager went off twice too, which normally in the district, good, bad, or ugly, you get to see me, but I was in St. Paul. Of those 2 runs, one run was less than 1 mile away from where the rig sits in Browns Valley, Minnesota. Had to go 25 miles away from Sisseton to get an ambulance because we only had EMRs. The other run, fortunately, an EMT literally just got into the district 3 hours later. He was there for about 2 minutes. Pager went off. So we were able to help with that. These are the things that we're talking about, folks. And when we were out across the state, there are actually 3 R's. Retention, reimbursement, and recruitment are the challenges that we see. This is a nonpartisan issue, but I have to say I'm very disappointed with the governor's balance recommendation of only $10 million. We are talking about, when it comes to EMS, we are at the same crisis that the nursing homes. I know we don't have a lot of money this year, but this is what happens. We need to prioritize EMS because we, Minnesotans, depend, when you dial 911, that you see an EMS. You see an EMT or a paramedic. I'm an EMT. With some variances, our services are able to do things more than regular basic service. So there's a lot of work to do. Representative Listegard will know that this doesn't solve all the problems. A short-term bandage, we have to look at what I call the taxi runs. You know, those runs last week weren't taxi runs. Those were serious emergency runs. But we do get too many taxi runs where we pick up somebody and unfortunately we take them to the hospital so they can get their prescription filled. Yes, we have that, those type of runs. We have people who don't have a car to get to the hospital. We take those runs. Those are extremely frustrating runs for us EMS personnel because we have no problem when those are the serious runs. But the fact is I'm not a spring chicken. I'm 57 years old. And I'm not going to be doing this gig very long. And communities like Graceville, Browns Valley, Henning, Mountain Orange, Hibbing, even though Virginia, those taxpayers are subsidizing it through their property tax because they're taking the money out of general funds. Or like in West Central, we're holding pancake feeds and sending out fundraisers letters so we can raise $33,000. That's what our service did last year. So when the pager goes off, we can be out there. So this isn't a fix-all. It is a big ask. There are some concerns that I have with the bill that I'll continue to work with the author and several of the stakeholders, but this is something that's needed so we can do the long-term fix. So when your loved ones dial 911, they have an ambulance close by, instead of what happened last night in Browns Valley and what happened last week in Browns Valley, where we had 3 runs that we had to call an ambulance service 25 miles away instead of 1 mile away. So thank you, Madam Chair, for a little longer. As you know, this is a passion of mine. I've been doing this for 29 years. Thank you, Representative Listegard.
Thank you. Representative New Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Listegard. First of all, I appreciate the thoroughness of the bill. I also appreciate the reporting requirements so that we know how this money is being spent. I feel like the bill was done in a really thorough way, and I appreciate that. My question is, with the DE amendment, I know in the underlying bill you had appropriated $1 million to the commissioner for administrative costs. It's now a blank appropriation. What are you expecting to happen with that blank appropriation?
Representative Listegard.
Madam Chair, if I could have Mr. Simonson.
Okay. Very good, Mr. Simonson.
Madam Chair, Representative, very good question. The original bill, we just plugged a number in there just as a placeholder, not having a fiscal note yet. There should be a fiscal note in your packet, I do believe, that indicates an amount that was identified for the Department of Revenue to administer this. It's significantly less than $1 million. So in theory, that number could be plugged in there.
Yep, it's $57,000 in 2025. Sounds like a deal. Representative Brindley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, because my eyes went like this when I saw $1 million for something that's not even going to require one FTE to administer this over the approximately year and a half that it has. So I very much appreciate that. That's good news. I will say, you know, I was listening to Mr. O'Rourke's comments. This is a short-term Band-Aid. And I have a lot of frustration. You know, Representative Backer said, you know, we don't have much money. I would say we don't have any money. It's incredibly frustrating that when we did this budget 1 year ago, we had the largest surplus in state history. We also raised taxes more than we have ever done in the history of the state. We had almost $30 billion to work with. We knew this problem existed then. I sit near Representative Backer all the time. I hear about this problem all the time. We knew this problem existed, but we didn't fix it when we actually had the money to do it. And now we're going to spend $120 million, and I do not disagree with the merits of the bill and of the program. But we're going to spend $120 million of money that we don't have, because we already know that we are in I get it, we're trying to rebrand, now we're calling it a structural imbalance. A deficit by any other name is still a deficit. It's not a structural imbalance. What that means is we don't have the money. And we're going to take another $120 million and add to that problem. That's not going to be able to go towards all of those underlying expenses that we have already committed to. And we ignored this when we had almost $30 billion to deal with the problem. It's incredibly maddening.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I had thoughts along those lines as we just heard, but people in the audience and at home, this is why when we ask about having checks and balances to prevent fraud, it hurts me to no degree that I can explain when we have hundreds of millions of dollars go to fraud. And I know if we had an extra $200-300 million, how much we could help. And, you know, frankly, we need to make sure we do it right so we actually have the money to address these needs that get overlooked or get kicked down the road for another year. So let's do our due diligence in other areas so we can actually address this blaring need. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. So I'm just going to make a quick comment, and then I'll let Representative Listgard make a quick closing comment. So, you know, this is a problem, yeah, that's been building for many, many years. And frankly, I don't really remember before DFLers asked for that OLA report and started digging into this. I don't recall anything. I don't recall any Republican members having a bill on this for funding. Don't remember that. Maybe if they had one, they could give me the number. I don't remember seeing that. So, you know, we're all empowered to file bills. We're all empowered to advocate for stuff, and being in the minority is no excuse if you don't push for what you need, what you think is needed. And I don't think this is a partisan issue, and let's not make it one. You know, I don't recall there being a bill last year for a bunch of funding. And but, you know, to go to the more positive note, I've appreciated a lot of the testifiers talking about this is a multifaceted problem. We have heard a number of bills this session. We're going to hear more to try to get at some of the different aspects of this. And I appreciate that this is a bipartisan effort. I appreciate that Representative Listgard is leading the way on an important aspect of this. And you know, when we look across our whole healthcare system, we got a lot of needs, lots of them. I mean, hospitals have been telling us they need money too. They'd love to have I'm sure if we said, let's have a bill for $120 million for them, they'd be thrilled. You know, we can do what we can do. And I do think there's a bipartisan agreement. This is a very important issue. We need to make sure that we have, as we change the system to make it more sustainable and better functioning, we do need to make sure that we don't lose any ambulance services that are providing essential service. We need to make sure, you know, if people have an emergency today, they need help today. So I think this is a good balance that we're trying to strike here, and again, appreciate Representative Lislegard's leadership on this. And so, final word, Representative Lislegard.
Point of information, Madam Chair.
Representative Backer.
Yeah, 3 years ago, I did drop a bill for $30 million. Just
Okay,
point of
very
information.
good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, 3 years ago. Representative Lislegard.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. And, you know, you heard the testimony and you heard Representative Backer's heart and his experience. And that is what I heard across the state of Minnesota. And this bill was brought to me and it was put together with the checks and balances from a bunch of stakeholders, including the AMC, who did an incredible job with this. And, you know, I'm not here to play politics. I'm here to help the people of the state of Minnesota, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'd appreciate if you would support this bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Representative Lislegard. So with that, I'm going to renew my motion that House File 3992 as amended be re-referred to the Tax Committee. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion prevails, and the bill is on its way. And thank you to the testifiers who came down to testify.